The morning sky above Earth turned black as thousands of alien ships blotted out the sun. The Valkyrie fleet had arrived without warning. Their massive vessels floating like dark clouds over every major city on the planet. People stopped in the streets, pointing upward with trembling fingers as the ships cast long shadows across the world. Admiral Vexera walked slowly across the bridge of his command ship, his tall figure moving with the confidence of someone who had conquered dozens of worlds before Earth. His pale blue skin gleamed under the ship's lights. His four arms gestured casually as he studied the planet below through the viewing screens. To him, Earth looked like every other primitive. The world he had claimed for the Valkyrie Empire? Another easy victory, he muttered to his second-in-command. The scouts report these humans barely have ships that can reach their own moon. This will be over in days. Far below the alien fleet, deep beneath the busy streets of Seoul, Dr. Kim Hyun-woo sat in a hidden bunker that most people didn't know existed. His fingers moved quickly across glowing screens as he watched the alien ships through secret cameras placed around the city. Sweat dripped down his face as he activated systems that had been waiting in silence for 50 years. The bunker around him hummed with activity as dozens of technicians worked at their stations. Maps of the world covered the walls, marked with red dots that showed the locations of hidden weapons and secret bases. Everything they had built, everything they had prepared, was about to be tested. "The time has come," Kim whispered into his communication device. "Send the message to all stations. Operation Sleeping Tiger begins now." Across the ocean in Washington, President Park Min-ho sat at a large table surrounded by military leaders and government officials. Everyone in the room looked scared, but Park knew that fear was exactly what they needed to show. For decades, Earth's leaders had planned for this moment, and now they had to act like helpless victims. "Remember?" Park said quietly to the people. "Around him, we must appear weak. Let them think we are frightened children who cannot fight back. Our survival depends on this deception." The Valkyrie envoys landed in the capital cities of every nation on Earth. They were tall creatures with blue skin and forearms, wearing armor that shimmered like liquid metal. They walked with the arrogance of conquerors who had never been defeated, carrying weapons that could destroy entire buildings with a single shot. In London, the Valkyrie commander stood before the British Prime Minister and spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Your species will serve the Valkyrie Empire. You will give us your resources, your strongest workers, and your most valuable land. Those who resist will die. Those who obey will live as our slaves." Similar scenes played out in every capital around the world. The alien demands were always the same: surrender everything or watch your world burn. The human leaders signed the treaties with shaking hands, tears running down their faces as they gave away their planet's freedom. But in secret military bases, hidden deep underground, a different story was unfolding. Captain Lee Dong-han stood in a command center buried beneath a mountain in South Korea, watching as screens showed the positions of every Valkyrie ship. His uniform bore no flags or symbols that would identify his nationality, because he commanded soldiers from every country on Earth. "All units, this is Shadow Command." Lee spoke into his radio. "The aliens have taken the bait. Begin Phase 1 of the resistance plan. Remember, they must never suspect what we are truly capable of." Around the world, ordinary-looking buildings and warehouses began to change. Hidden panels slid open to reveal advanced weapon systems. Underground factories that had been disguised as subway tunnels started producing ammunition and equipment. Soldiers who had been pretending to be farmers and shop owners picked up weapons that were far more advanced than anything the aliens expected humans to possess. Engineer Choi Soy-young worked frantically in a hidden laboratory beneath what appeared to be a normal apartment building in Tokyo. Around her, machines that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies powered up for the first time in years. She had spent her entire adult life preparing these weapons. Reverse engineering technology from alien ships that had crashed on Earth decades earlier. Power levels at maximum, she reported to her team. All systems ready for activation. Gravitational pulse cannons are online, and the plasma shield generators are responding normally. The Valkyrie soldiers who patrolled the streets of human cities saw exactly what they expected to see: a defeated species accepting their fate, They watched humans go about their daily lives with heads bowed in submission. They saw primitive weapons being handed over to collection points, and they observed human military forces surrendering their equipment without resistance. What they did not see were the sensors hidden in every streetlight, recording their movements. They did not notice the special signals being transmitted between seemingly innocent radio stations. They had no idea that beneath their feet, a vast network of tunnels connected secret bases that stretched across continents. Admiral Vexthera stood on his bridge, satisfied with how quickly the humans had surrendered. In his experience, primitive species always chose slavery over death. These humans seemed no different from the dozens of other worlds he had conquered for the Empire. He had no way of knowing that. Earth's surrender was the beginning of the most carefully planned deception in human history, and that his easy victory would soon become his greatest nightmare. 3 months had passed since the Valkyrie claimed Earth as their newest colony. The alien soldiers walked through human cities like they owned everything they saw, which they believed they did. But strange things were starting to happen that made the aliens wonder if their easy conquest was really as complete as they thought. Lieutenant Yoon Jamin crouched in the shadows behind a broken wall in what used to be the busy port city of Busan. The city looked empty and destroyed, exactly the way his team had made it appear. Scattered rubble and burned-out cars lined the streets. But hidden beneath the fake destruction were carefully planned hiding places and secret passages. His team of 12 fighters moved like ghosts through the ruins, each person knowing exactly where to step to avoid making noise. They wore clothes that looked like rags, but were actually made from advanced materials that blocked the aliens' heat sensors. Their faces were dirty and tired-looking, the perfect disguise for defeated humans who had given up hope. The Valkyrie supply depot sat in the middle of what used to be the city center, surrounded by tall metal walls and guarded by blue-skinned soldiers carrying energy weapons. Inside the depot, the aliens stored food, ammunition, and repair parts for their ships. It was one of dozens of similar bases they had built across Earth. Yoon signaled to his team using hand gestures they had practiced thousands of times. 2 fighters moved toward the back wall, while others created distractions on the opposite side. Within minutes, they had planted small devices that looked like ordinary rocks but contained explosives. It's more powerful than anything the aliens thought humans could make. Package delivered, Yoon whispered into a communication device hidden in his collar. 30 minutes until the fireworks begin. Far beneath the streets of Seoul, Dr. Kim Hyun-woo worked in a laboratory that officially did not exist. The room was filled with machines and computers that hummed quietly as they processed data and manufactured weapons. On his workbench sat devices that would have amazed the aliens if they had known such things were possible. His assistant, Han Myung, carefully handled a weapon that looked like a simple metal tube but could cut through alien armor like butter. She had spent 2 years learning to build these devices from blueprints that were older than she was. Plans created by scientists who had studied crashed alien ships decades before the invasion. The plasma cutter is ready for field testing, she reported to Kim. The power cells will last for 6 hours of continuous use, and the beam can penetrate their strongest materials. Kim nodded as he adjusted another device on his workbench. This one looked like a small radio, but it was actually a jamming system that could block alien communications across an entire city. Our grandparents would be proud, he said quietly. They started this work when the first alien ship crashed. In Siberia, in 1973, every piece of technology we salvaged, every secret we discovered, has led to this moment. The laboratory around them contained 50 years of human ingenuity and determination. Shelves lined the walls, filled with weapons, tools, and devices that combined human creativity with alien technology. Each item had been carefully designed to look harmless or primitive, hiding their true capabilities from any alien who might discover them. Above ground, Admiral Vexthera stood in his command center aboard the flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. His supply convoys were disappearing at an alarming rate. Yesterday, 3 trucks carrying ammunition had vanished between 2 checkpoints only 5 kilometers apart. The drivers were never found, and the cargo had simply evaporated. "Explain this to me," he demanded from his intelligence officer. waving a datapad filled with incident reports. How does a primitive species make entire convoys disappear without leaving any evidence? The intelligence officer, a nervous-looking alien with scars across his face from previous campaigns, shifted uncomfortably. Sir, we believe the humans are using guerrilla tactics. Small groups hiding in the ruins, striking quickly and then disappearing? With what weapons? Vexara's voice rose in anger. We confiscated everything they had. We watched them destroy their military equipment. They should be fighting us with sticks and stones. But the problems were getting worse every day. Communication towers suffered mysterious failures that human technicians claimed they could not repair. Mining equipment broke down constantly. And the human workers always had reasonable explanations for why nothing seemed to work properly. Alien patrols reported seeing suspicious movements in abandoned buildings. But whenever they investigated, they found only empty rooms and scared civilians. The truth was that every human civilian was part of the resistance. Whether they knew it or not, the old woman selling fruit in the market was actually recording the movements of alien patrols. The repair worker fixing broken pipes was really installing hidden sensors and communication lines. The children playing in the streets were carrying messages between resistance cells in his underground command post. Captain Lee Donghaen studied maps that showed the locations of every alien base and patrol route. Red pins marked successful operations, while blue pins showed targets for future attacks. The map was covered with more red pins than blue ones, proof that the resistance was winning more victories than the aliens realized. Phase 2 begins tomorrow, he announced to his staff. It's time to let them know that their easy conquest is about to become their worst nightmare. The deception was working perfectly, and the aliens still had no idea what was coming next. The moment had finally arrived. Captain Lee Donghaen stood in his underground command center, his hand hovering over a red button that would change everything. Around him, dozens of officers from every nation on Earth waited in silence, their eyes fixed on the screens that showed alien positions across the planet. All stations report ready, his communications officer announced. Orbital platforms are powered and locked onto targets. Ground forces are in position. Cyber warfare teams are standing by. Lee took a deep breath and pressed the button. Operation Rising Storm is now active. Show them what humans are really capable of. High above Earth's atmosphere, structures that had been disguised as space debris and old satellites suddenly came to life. Hidden solar panels unfolded like metal flowers. Weapon systems that had been sleeping for years powered up with a deep humming sound. These orbital defense platforms had been built in secret over 2 decades, launched piece by piece and assembled by astronauts, who the aliens thought were just fixing broken communication equipment. The first Valkyrie supply ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from the ground. The plasma cannon beam cut through the alien vessel's shields and armor as if they were made of thin paper. Within seconds, 3 more supply ships were destroyed, their wreckage spinning away into the darkness of space. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Vexathara felt his ship shake as debris from the destroyed vessels bounced off his shields. His forearms moved frantically across his control panels as he tried to understand what was happening. The primitive humans weren't supposed to have weapons that could reach space, let alone destroy his advanced warships. Damage report, he shouted to his crew. Where are those attacks coming from? His tactical officer pointed at the main display. Screen with a trembling finger. Sir, the attacks are coming from orbital platforms, but according to our intelligence, the humans don't have any military satellites. Vexthera's eyes widened in disbelief as more of his ships exploded on the screen. That's impossible. We've been monitoring their space activities for months. They barely have primitive rockets. Down on Earth's surface, Engineer Choi Soyoung sat in a control room hidden beneath what appeared to be an ordinary office building in Tokyo. Her fingers danced across a keyboard as she activated systems that she had spent 5 years building and testing. The screens around her showed power levels rising as massive machines buried deep underground came online. Gravity manipulation system is fully operational, she announced to her team. All field generators are responding perfectly, beginning targeted strikes on enemy ground vehicles. The technology she was using had been developed from wreckage of an alien scout ship that crashed in the Pacific Ocean in 1987. Human scientists had spent decades learning how to recreate the aliens' gravity control systems, improving on the original design until they had weapons that were even more powerful than what the Velkari used. A convoy of Velkar-armored vehicles was moving through the streets of Berlin when the first gravity field activated. The lead vehicle suddenly compressed like an aluminum can being crushed by an invisible giant hand. Metal screamed and twisted as the gravitational forces pressed the vehicle into a ball no larger than a basketball. The alien soldiers inside didn't even have time to scream. The other vehicles in the convoy tried to retreat, but more gravity fields activated around them. One by one, the massive war machines that had terrorized human cities were compressed into twisted lumps of metal. The few aliens who managed to escape their vehicles found themselves unable to move as gravity fields pressed them against the ground with crushing force. Similar scenes played out in cities across the world. Alien tanks and aircraft that had seemed invincible suddenly found themselves helpless against weapons that attacked the very force that held the universe together. The Velkari soldiers who had strutted through human streets like conquerors now ran in terror from an enemy they couldn't see or understand. Lieutenant Yoon Jae-min watched the destruction from his position in Busan, but his real work was happening. In the digital world, months earlier, his team had secretly connected to the aliens' computer networks using technology salvaged from crashed ships. Every report the Velkari had received about human capabilities had been carefully crafted by Han Myung's cyber warfare division. "They still think we're using gunpowder weapons," Han reported from her hidden location. "Their tactical computers show human forces as primitive and poorly equipped. They have no idea that every piece of intelligence they've received has been false. The deception had been perfect. While the aliens believed they were fighting Stone-Age humans with basic weapons, the reality was that Earth's military had technology that was equal to or better than the Valkyrie's own equipment. Surrendered weapon had been a decoy. Every destroyed military base had been empty. The real human military had been hidden underground. Waiting for this moment, Admiral Vexthera watched in horror as his forces were systematically destroyed by an enemy that wasn't supposed to exist. His confident invasion was falling apart, and he finally understood that he had been completely fooled. The primitive humans had played a game of deception so perfect that even his advanced intelligence systems had been tricked. The easy conquest had become a nightmare, and the Valkyrie were losing badly. The war had been raging for 6 long months. Earth looked very different than it had before the aliens arrived. Many cities were damaged or destroyed, with broken buildings and empty streets where millions of people once lived. But the humans refused to give up, and their hidden command centers kept coordinating attacks against the Valkyrie forces even when everything seemed hopeless. Dr. Kim Hyun-woo had barely slept in weeks as he worked in his secret laboratory deep beneath Seoul. His eyes were red from staring at microscopes and computer screens. But he had finally made the discovery that could end the war. On his workbench sat a small glass container filled with what looked like ordinary water, but the liquid inside was the most dangerous weapon ever created by human hands. "The biological agent is ready for testing," he announced to his assistant, Han Myung, who looked just as tired as he did. "I've modified a common Earth virus so that it only affects Valkyrie biology. Their immune systems have no defense against it because they've never encountered anything like it before." Picked up the container and held it up to the light. "You certain it won't harm humans or Earth animals?" Kim nodded, pointing to test results displayed on his computer screen. "I've tested it on samples of Valkyrie tissue we collected from their dead soldiers. The virus attacks their specific cell structure and spreads through their respiratory system. But it's completely harmless to every form of Earth's life." The virus was more than just a weapon. It was humanity's best hope for survival. The Valkyrie had superior numbers and technology, but they had one fatal weakness. They had spent so many centuries conquering primitive worlds that their immune systems had never adapted to deal with truly alien diseases. Meanwhile, Captain Lee Dong-haeon was preparing for the most dangerous mission of his life: intelligence. Reports showed that the Valkyrie command ship was orbiting above the Pacific Ocean, protected by dozens of smaller vessels. If he could capture or destroy the ship, the entire alien fleet would lose its coordination and become vulnerable to attack. His assault team consisted of 30 of Earth's best soldiers, each one trained to use captured alien weapons and equipment. They had spent weeks studying the layout of Valkyrie ships and practicing their attack plan in a mock-up built from wreckage of destroyed alien vessels. "Remember," Lee told his team as they prepared to launch in a captured Valkyrie transport ship, "we're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for every world these monsters have destroyed." The transport ship approached the command vessel disguised as a damaged Valkyrie courier carrying important supplies. The alien guards allowed them to dock without suspicion, believing they were receiving reinforcements from their home world. It was the perfect infiltration. Made possible by months of studying alien procedures and behaviors, Lee's team moved quickly through the ship's corridors, using weapons that fired silent energy beams to eliminate guards before they could raise alarms. But as they went deeper into the vessel, they began to see things that made their blood run cold. The walls were decorated with trophies from conquered worlds, alien skulls, preserved creatures, and artwork from civilizations that no longer existed. In the ship's data center, Lee accessed the Valkyrie computer systems and discovered files that revealed the true horror of the Empire. The aliens hadn't just conquered hundreds of worlds. They had completely exterminated every intelligent species they encountered. Entire planets had been stripped of all life, their resources harvested, and their populations eliminated down to the last individual. "Command, this is Lee," he radioed back to Earth, his voice shaking with anger and disgust. "You need to see these records. The Valkyrie aren't conquerors who enslave other species. They're exterminators who wipe out every form of intelligent life they find." The data files showed planet after planet reduced to lifeless rocks. Species that had taken millions of years to evolve were eliminated in months or weeks. The Valkyrie Empire was a machine of death that consumed entire worlds and left nothing behind but empty space. This discovery changed everything for the human resistance. They weren't just fighting to free Earth from occupation. They were fighting to prevent humanity from becoming another extinct species in the Valkyrie's collection of trophies. Every human who heard Lee's report felt a new determination to win the war at any cost. Engineer Choi So-young received the news while working in a captured Valkyrie shipyard that the Resistance had taken control of weeks earlier. She had been studying alien technology and learning how to modify their ships for human use, but now her work took on new urgency. "We're not just defending ourselves anymore," she told her engineering team. "We're the last hope for justice in this part of the galaxy. Every ship we capture, every weapon we turn against them, is a victory for all the species they've murdered." Her team worked around the clock to convert captured Valkyrie vessels into human warships. They removed alien control systems and replaced them with human interfaces, upgraded the weapons with Earth technology, and painted new symbols on the hulls that marked them as ships of the human fleet. The tide of war was turning, and for the first time since the invasion began, the Valkyrie were truly afraid. The primitive species they had come to exterminate was becoming a threat they had never faced before. An enemy that refused to die? Admiral Vexera stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, his forearms shaking with rage and desperation. Around him, the command center was filled with the bodies of his officers, victims of the human biological weapon that had swept through his fleet like an unstoppable plague. His once mighty armada was reduced to a handful of dying ships, and his dreams of conquest had turned into a nightmare of defeat. He had two choices: return to the Valkyrie Empire and face execution for his failure, or ensure that no one would ever know how badly he had been beaten by a species he had dismissed. As primitive, the decision was easy. If he could not have Earth as a colony, then Earth would burn until nothing remained but ashes and radiation. His fingers moved across the control panel, activating the orbital bombardment platforms that still surrounded the planet. These massive weapons could crack continents and boil oceans, turning the blue-green world below into a lifeless rock. At least his superiors would believe he had destroyed a dangerous enemy rather than lost to an inferior species. Charging planetary destruction weapons, he announced to the empty bridge. In 10 minutes, there will be nothing left of this cursed world. But far below on Earth's surface, humanity was ready for this final, desperate act. In command centers across the planet, soldiers and scientists who had spent months preparing for exactly this moment began executing the plan that would determine whether their species lived or died. Lieutenant Yoon Jae-min led his strike teams. In simultaneous attacks on every remaining Valkyrie installation on Earth, from the ruins of Tokyo to the underground bunkers beneath London, human forces emerged from hiding places the aliens had never discovered. They moved with precision and fury. Knowing that they had only minutes to eliminate every alien presence on their world, in New York, Yoon's team stormed a Valkyrie communication center, their plasma weapons cutting through alien guards like hot knives through butter. All targets secured, he reported over his radio. No survivors, no witnesses. The aliens won't be calling for help. Similar reports came in from around the world as the last Valkyrie ground forces were wiped out by humans who fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Every alien soldier, every alien technician, every alien commander died in those final minutes, ensuring that none would live to tell their empire about humanity's true capabilities. Dr. Kim Hyun-woo from his laboratory as his biological weapon completed its work. The virus he had created was spreading through the alien fleet faster than their medical systems could respond. Valkyrie soldiers were collapsing at their posts, their immune systems completely overwhelmed by a disease their bodies had never encountered. Before biological contamination is at 97%, he reported to the resistance leadership. Only the command ship still shows signs of life, and even that won't last much longer. The weapon was perfectly designed for this moment. It killed quickly but not instantly, giving the aliens just enough time to understand what was happening to them. As they died, they knew they had been defeated by the very species they had planned to exterminate. Engineer Choi So-young commanded a fleet of captured Valkyrie warships that humanity had converted for their own use. The vessels still looked alien on the outside, but their controls were now operated by human hands, and their weapons were guided by human determination. She had spent months learning every detail of alien technology, and now she was using that knowledge to destroy her former captors. All ships target the flagship, she ordered over the communication system. Concentrate fire on their main engines. We need to stop them from escaping, but leave the bridge intact. Captain Lee needs a way inside. The converted fleet opened. Fire on Admiral Vextera's command ship, energy beams tearing through shields and armor that had once seemed invincible. The massive vessel shuddered under the assault, its weapon systems failing one by one as human-controlled ships systematically dismantled its defenses. Captain Lee Dong-haen led the final boarding assault, his team cutting through the hull of the crippled flagship like surgeons opening a patient. They moved through corridors filled with dead and dying aliens, following a path that led directly to the bridge where Admiral Vextera waited in his final moments. The alien commander was slumped in his command chair when Lee arrived, his blue skin pale and sickly from the biological weapon coursing through his system. His breathing was labored, and his forearms could barely lift the weapon he pointed at the approaching human. "You were supposed to be primitive," Vextera wheezed, his voice weak and filled with disbelief. "Our intelligence said you barely had fire." Lee stood over the dying alien, his own weapon steady and sure. Around them, the bridge was falling apart as explosions rocked the ship. "Your empire made one terrible mistake," he said calmly. "You thought humans were just another species you could wipe out? You never realized that we were the species that wipes out species like you." The Admiral's eyes widened with understanding just before Lee pulled the trigger. The last shot of the war echoed through the command bridge as the final Valkyrie leader died, taking with him any chance that his empire would ever learn what had really happened to their invasion force. Minutes later, the flagship exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up Earth's sky like a second sun. The burning wreckage fell toward the planet below, marking the end of the Valkyrie threat and the beginning of humanity's rise to the stars.